Once the stand is assembled and the machine is sitting on top of the stand, you can assemble and attach your thread rack or the thread tree on your machine. This is the thread base, this is the thread tree. The plastic pieces are basically 4 pieces. You got the base, the top of the tree, and then the 3 legs. The legs are going to attach underneath the bottom with Phillips head screws for each of the 3 legs. Attach those to the base, and then the top piece attaches with 3mm bolts. There are 4, one here, and 2 here. Once you're there, you're going to set this on top of the sewing arm of the machine, and then there is 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips head screws, and everything is secured and attached. From there, what we have is a foam base that goes in next, and this simply sets down around the cone holders themselves as a soft base for the cones to sit on. Now that the thread rack is attached to the machine and assembled, we're ready to start the threading process. So just an explanation, on all SWF machines, everything is numbered from right to left. You'll notice 1 is always on the right, highest number is going to be on the left. When dealing with the thread tree and the thread base, keep in mind the furthest cone to the right is always going to be number 1. Second furthest is going to be number 2, and of course the furthest to the left is going to be the last needle. In this case, this is an MAS-12, so this is the tabletop version, smaller of the SWF. So this is a 12 needle, so this is number 12. Keep in mind that if the thread sets on the first row, it only goes through 1 eyelet of the thread tree, the first one. On the second row, it goes through 2 eyelets, and these threads will always be going straight forward, never at any type of angle. So the third row, first eyelet, second eyelet, third eyelet, and keep in mind that the eyelet will always be directly above where the cone of thread is physically setting. So we're going to reposition, show you how to attach the tubes, and then thread your machine for the first time. So now that we're ready to actually attach our threads and pull them through, threading your machine for the first time, keep in mind what a cone holder actually does. When the thread sets on a base, it's able to wobble. Make sure your machine is never operating on its wheels. This particular stand has locking casters, so when it's in place, make sure it gets locked. These can be pulled up and flared out for different types of cones. Keep in mind if you use any of the smaller miniature cones that these always need to be removed. Never set that cone physically on top of the holder. So bringing that up and sliding it through, it's going to lock this cone down into place. This machine does have tubes that attaches to it. So the first thing we're going to do, this sets on the first row of the thread base, therefore up at the thread tree, make sure you come under, and we're going to go through the first eyelet. I can see it. And once we come through there, now there's a couple of ways of getting the thread through this tube. This is a variegated tube, so it's not easy to blow it through. The easiest method I use the first time threading a machine is I simply use a needle, and then what I do is I thread the eye of the needle, pull the thread through maybe a foot or so, okay, and then what I do is I allow gravity to simply thread that tube for me. Now once that's out, I can put my needle down, use it for the next needle. The first one comes up, it's going to go around the post. Make sure you're not crimping the thread. So it's going to slide on. You're just going to pull the thread, make sure it's nice and free. Now the thread is already in the machine from the factory. We will have additional videos on how to thread it from start to finish, but this is how you set it up for the first time uncrating and packing the machine. We're going to tie those 2 threads together. Make sure nothing's going to catch or hang on anything. Now if you notice, we're tied together with the thread that's already through the tension base and through the head. So I'm going to grab down here at the bottom front. I'm going to start pulling that thread. You'll see it come through. And then when I get to here, what we're going to do is attach the tube on the other side. And it just pushes over the top. helps to spin it just a little bit to get it started. But once it's on there, it's definitely not going anywhere. What you want to do is hold the thread very loose, cut it at a slight angle, and that usually gives you a sharp piece of thread. Now we're going to come down through the thread guide, which is the white porcelain, go in behind the thread hook. Now this is important because this keeps the thread in line with the groove of the needle. This is the front of a needle. The back of a needle has a scarf or indentation right above the eye of the needle. The groove is in the front. This hook keeps the thread in line with the groove and the eye of the needle. So once we get the needle threaded, on this machine I can pull down a pressure foot. Keep in mind tweezers come in pretty handy and can be your best friend when threading a machine. Now this model machine, the pressure foot is in junction with the needle bar, so it comes down as it sews. So from there you want to go through the bottom of the pressure foot and come back up with roughly 1 inch of thread hanging there. Repeat that for all needles. This is part of the startup process of your machine. Now that we have the machine threaded, what we're going to do is mount our OP or operations panel to the machine. This is the touchscreen that comes with the machine. It's basically going to come unassembled in about 4 pieces. The first is the mounting plate that you see that I've already attached. This is 4 screws simply on the back of the bracket. Keep in mind that all the screws that you need are already in the bracket or the monitor or even the emergency switch. The screws are in what they need to go in, so you remove them to attach them. The next thing we're going to do from there is attach our emergency stop switch for the machine. It'll have 1 connector. Again, there's 4 screws in the back of it. You will find the first connector for it right here. All the connectors are different size and shape, so you're not going to get this wrong. So what you're going to do is connect your emergency stop and then just push that cable back through the opening here where all the cables come out of the machine. This is the sewing arm, down the mounting rod for the OP panel. So now we're ready to mount our OP box. So I'm going to grab it here on the side. So you'll notice this is our touch panel OP for the MAS machine. If you look on the back, the screws that are needed are already in it, so we're going to remove those. Now once I remove those 4 screws for the mounting to the base plate here, I'm also going to remove the 1 screw in the bottom. It'll be right hand corner. This is where we attach the ground wire to the OP box. So I'll take that screw off as well. Now what you want to do is gently keep in mind that this is a touch panel. This is the most expensive part of this machine. So you look on the back, the USB cables are up, the posts are to the right. So we can set that here on our emergency switch. You'll notice underneath the bottom, this is where our connectors go. There's only 2 connectors. You'll see there's an arrow for MC. This is where the Cat 7 cable goes, and then the ground wire here. And then right to the side of it is a 2-prong plug, and that is where the power connector goes. So all we're going to do is turn that over. We're going to connect our Cat 7, that is our data information transfer cable. And then we are connecting our power connector. Right. Once those 2 are connected, just gently make sure we're not dropping the box. If you need somebody to help you, that's fine. Okay, we're going to insert our ground wire on the box. Make sure that's snug. Reconfirm our connections are good, and now from there I can set this up. Find my screws that I took out of the back. And again, be gentle, do not drop this box. And the screw holes, once you get the first one in, the rest are going to line up. Word of advice, working on anything, on any piece of equipment there is, do not tighten one screw until every screw is installed. Then you can go back and retighten all, and you're good to go. So at this point, we are connecting the OP box to the base plate. All 4 screws are in. The last piece that we need to assemble, this is our manual keypad that comes with the machine. This has our start and stop button on it, framing arrows, a trim function, and data origin button. If you look on the back, once again, the screws we need, the 2 in the center, are to mount here on this base plate. So I'm going to remove those 2 screws. Now this one has only 1 connector, but you can see here it also has a ground wire that will mount to the top of the top screw on the OP box, but this one we can get to once it's physically mounted. So now I want to connect that. It only goes in one way, so you're not going to get it wrong. Make sure it's pushed all the way in. Make sure this is turned to where it's square up against. Don't turn it upside down. Okay, now once that's there, we're going to get our screws back in to the base plate so it's mounted. Again, if you want to have somebody help you with this, 3 hands are better than 2. Once we line up the first hole, the other one will line up automatically. Again, do not tighten it up until you get both screws in. And now I can tighten both of those up. And now I'm going to remove the screw on the top right of the OP box. And this is where I'm going to mount the ground wire for the manual keypad here on the side. Take your time, be patient. Remember, always double check your connections, make sure they're good. Get it mounted. Once everything's in place, the arm does pivot in and out, so you can see that it'll go at different angles, so you can set it what's more comfortable for you. It'll pivot up or down, but once in place, make sure you go through and tighten everything down. We don't want it moving during the embroidery process. Okay, from there, the next step is we're going to show you the power up on the machine, and we're ready to start testing. Okay, now that everything is assembled, we got the machine on the stand, we got the stand assembled, the thread tree assembled, everything's threaded, we got our OP box mounted correctly on the machine. Now it's time for power up. This is the power cord that you'll find in the box. You'll notice it's a standard PC connection cable that's on there. The other end, it's a 3-wire, of course, grounded cable. I do advise a lot of times you may want to check these even from the factory. You can open them up, just check and make sure those connections are nice and tight inside of there. Ever unplugging and removing your machine, remember, never pull by the cable, pull by the plug. That way you never interfere with the connections inside of here. If you notice on the back of your MAS machine, whether it's the 12 or the 15 needle, your on-off switch is here in the back. We're going to make sure that's down and in the off position. The PC connection cable goes here. Make sure it's pushed all the way in, and then we're ready to connect to our 110 AC power.